What's going on, all you wild John Hughes enthusiasts out there? It's your two favorite Brat Packers back here for Cinephellas. I'm Logan Myers. That's my good mate over there.
I'm Henry Hill, and we are back to review the brand new Hulu documentary. It's directed by one of the Brat Pack members himself, Andrew McCarthy. We're talking about the Brat Pack in Brats.
Not only changed all of our lives, it changed what entertainment is. I mean, I'm not going to say we were the Beatles or anything.
Well, we didn't fill Shea Stadium.
We could have. 1985? I think we could have.
Yeah, this is a documentary we've been super excited about for quite some time since we saw the trailer. Being huge fans of 80s movies, of course, John Hughes movies, and the Brat Pack movies we used to watch growing up all the time. We played on TBS, TNT. We just watch them over and over. You know, great stories, great characters, great directing, and they're timeless classics. And then fast forward all these years later, 40 years later, Andrew McCarthy trying to get the crew back together for this documentary called Brats, and one by one goes and interviews and has a conversation about the meaning of the Brat Pack and what it did to their career.
Very interesting to me that, this was the Brat Pack, and that label back then was like such a stigma, especially after that interview that Emilio had, where the person writing about him basically used that against him as like a negative thing, and it kind of put a lot of negative attention and press on them and pressure on these young actors. And it kind of broke a couple of them. Like they chose not to do certain projects because they didn't want to be labeled as a brat.
Yeah.
But now, all these years later, 40 some years later, after those movies and that, that the time period in the 80s there with the John Hughes movies and everybody, and seeing all these young actors together and then meeting up with them today when they're all older, gray hair, wiser, and have had time to reflect now, and now they're finally coming back and meeting each other again. Some of the people, haven't met since those films, like haven't really maintained a relationship. But we have Andrew McCarthy here leading this, and he is basically going around the country, and he wants to interview each of the members and some of the crew and the directors that were involved, the casting directors, etc., and kind of get their take on like what the Brat Pack meant to them and what the legacy is, and just like pick their brains about it. And he brings like camera crew with him. And I think it starts off where Andrew meets up with Emilio Estevez, and they have a meeting at Emilio's house and are just like standing up and talking to each other. And Emilio gets right into it, basically about that famous interview that he did and how it kind of, ruined a lot of projects for him after that time period. And, you could kind of see how he should have been bigger than he was, than he ended up. And I think it had a lot to do with like that label, like getting in his head, and it probably caused him some, him to lose some work back then.
Yeah, he seemed really standoffish and kind of a prick in a way, but I can now understand why he was the way he was in the documentary, because it probably did mess with his career. Emilio did some flicks in the 90s. Young Guns, I remember, of course, Mighty Ducks and stuff like that, but nothing like Oscar award winning that I remember. So definitely messed with his career. So he did a lot of work after all that, behind the camera. He was just kind
Mhm.
of disappointed, kind of depressed about that whole Brat Pack situation, because that whole article in 1985 in the New York was really focused on him with the title of Brat Pack, and really started this whole era for these actors behind me, young and up and coming
Mhm.
actors and actresses. And throughout the documentary, he gets to interview most, not all, but Ali Sheedy was really interesting. Haven't seen her in a long time, of course. Demi Moore seems like a person that's been to a lot of therapy, according to the interview. She was
Mhm.
like really positive and happy, which was
Yeah.
interesting. And of course, Rob Lowe, he's still acting all the time. See him in a lot of TV shows and movies. So it was cool seeing him. He
Mhm.
also seemed very cool and down to earth and happy, and just thankful for the experience.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely cool seeing Ali Sheedy. Like she seems like she's kind of like the same person, just,
Yeah.
with some years on her now, but like really grateful of that period of time. Like you can tell it really meant a lot to her, and it didn't seem like it had as much of a negative impact on her psyche as it did the other members, who probably thought they were a little bigger like their egos got inflated. And it feels like she didn't let it get to her head. She kind of just used it as a positive and, went on to probably be I'm assuming she's a mother and is probably a grandma now. So she just seems like a cool older lady now that like really loved that time of her life. Whereas the others, you could tell there were some issues there, but it was really cool seeing them interact like with Andrew McCarthy. And throughout the documentary, it goes back and shows you those films where they had scenes together. So you get to see, 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink, and we got St. Elmo's Fire, and we also got music from all those movies. And that's really a thing that helped cement those movies into everybody's, favorite movies of all time. And that the John Hughes films, he knew what songs to pick. And it's like you can hear one of those songs and you're like, okay, St. Elmo's Fire, that's what I'm thinking of, John Parr. And it, shows that music video. And it just brings you back to that time and makes you think of these movies. And they sure did have an impact, even on me. I was so young at the time, but I remember my brother just loving those movies and me watching it with him. And it just kind of formed the way we were as young adults and going into those years and just wanting to be cool like those guys were and do the same stuff that they did in the high school when they're, all there on a Saturday in detention. So just a cool documentary and seeing them all older and wiser now and talking about all those times back then. Yeah, and like you mentioned, there was a couple other people that weren't in the Brat Pack. I thought it was interesting. They went and talked to Timothy Hutton. They
Yeah,
went and talked to him, and
makes sense.
yeah, it made sense. He was a young actor at the time, not necessarily part of Brat Pack, but he had his own opinions about working as a young actor and kind of the pitfalls that he was able to avoid and what those movies meant to him too. So a very good documentary. I liked what Andrew McCarthy did here. He seemed very genuine and honest and open with people. And it feels like, now that he's had some time to reflect on everything, he like really appreciates everything. He, appreciates the times that he had back then and the relationships that he's formed. And he's like made friendships with these people. And like he said in the documentary, he was talking to Emilio and like, he's like, we haven't talked all these years, but like we just stepped into a room here and I'm comfortable with you. It's like we're bonded by this Brat Pack label. And Amelia's like, yeah, you're right. A lot of the actors wanted to focus on the now and not necessarily look back and always be in the past, which is interesting too. They just want to look forward. And that's where we get like Judd Nelson not appearing in there and Molly Ringwald. They didn't want to, I guess they didn't want to talk too much about back then. They wanted to focus on the now and not live in the past so much. But they were still able to incorporate those two into the documentary through old footage and through that funny little bit at the end of the movie.
I was wondering if they were going to talk about John Hughes, and of course they do, and it has
They
some
did.
footage of him on set, which is really awesome. I haven't seen that before. I can't remember which movie it was, maybe 16 Candles, Pretty in
Mhm.
Pink. But being one of our favorite directors growing up in Illinois, it was just a huge part of our childhood, and seeing these actors and actresses all these years later, remember being a kid, hearing about the Brat Pack, watching the movies, but I didn't look at it as a negative thing. That's just who they were.
Mhm.
Kind of like the Rat Pack, but the Brat Pack, a younger version.
Right.
But there's that stigma going around, about how bad they were, a bunch of kids that didn't give a shit about the industry. They're just having fun, partying, things like that. But they're really serious. They wanted to be professionals and they wanted to be successful in Hollywood and didn't really turn out that way for them. But really cool seeing all these actors, actresses I haven't seen in a long time. Hoping they do another one where Molly Ringwald and Judd show up, in the next one and they dive into more, maybe some other actors from the, movies, all the movies that happened back in the day. But it was also cool seeing, like John Cryer show up and Timothy Hutton makes more sense now. He was kind of the original like child actor, like early 80s. He won an Oscar, I think at like 20. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Didn't know that. I had a really great time at Bratz. Really looking forward to this. Had a fun time watching this with the wife. A lot of great music taking you back, all the nostalgia, great in-depth, story and about all these different people and how it changed their lives forever and how they're also, bonded. Fans out there of the 80s John Hughes movies, I think you'll have a great time with this. Currently streaming on Hulu, so check it out. That being said, I'm going to give it a 4. out of 5 Emilio Estevez hairpieces.
And I'm going to give Brats a 4 out of 5 Judd Nelson hairpieces. Interesting because Judd and Molly, they didn't want to be in this, but then I've seen like footage online of them all at conventions, like having Q&A sessions and stuff, and talking about all that, all the Brat Pack and all that too. So maybe there just wasn't enough money involved to lure them out. I don't know what the deal is there. So yeah, like you mentioned, it'd be cool if there was a part 2 and get those two that we missed, because I haven't, like we were talking about, I haven't seen Judd Nelson in forever. It seems like I want to see where he's at in his life now and what he's like. Old Bender, we'll remember him forever. But yeah, lately they've been talking about getting a St. Elmo's Fire 2 off the ground. So they're definitely riding the high off this documentary and hoping that it'll gain some ground here. And that would be interesting to see, like how they do that, what they do with the story, getting those characters all together and exploring it. It would basically be like, seeing those characters as parents, and whatever's happened in this chapter of their lives, did it all work out after that movie? So that would be pretty interesting to see. But this one was definitely a good documentary. I'm glad I watched it, and we all recommend you guys check it out too. Make sure after you watch it to let us know who's your favorite Brat Pack member, and leave a comment in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe. Make sure to check out our website, Cinephellas.com. We're updating it daily with the daily news drops. A lot of movie and TV news every day we update. Check out our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and X, for all the latest and greatest in TV movie news and reviews.
Also, stay tuned to our YouTube channel right here all summer long. Me and this guy are going to be back talking about movies and TV shows, all the blockbusters coming out, and all the TV shows coming out of every streaming service, it seems like every day.
And we wouldn't want to do it with anybody else. We thank you guys for watching our review of the Hulu documentary, Brats. And until the next Cinefellas TV review, I'm Uncle Henry.
And I'm Uncle Andrew McCarthy, signing out until the next TV review. Cheers!
Cheers!